Welcome all of you to our town. A little less than a year ago, if you were standing where you are right now, you'd be knee deep in water. What we're talking about today, or what we want to discuss, is the response to emergency flooding, weather changes, and how we could better warn the public. I could tell you on the day that we had our flood, and obviously it was a tragic day. We lost 2 Oxford residents, almost lost 2 firemen. One was pinned under a guardrail, and we rescued over 80 people from cars. So it was a perilous day for a lot of people. And to me, it was just a rainstorm. And we did get flash flood warnings, and fortunately our fire department was manned right away. The fire department is right across the street here, and they were able to proceed and get people out of the cars and everything else. But it was a day like any other day. How many rainstorms I've seen over my life, and I never really, I thought the worst rainstorm I ever saw was in South Carolina, and this topped that. We had, I think, 16 inches of rain in 4 hours. And, you look at this town, you say, geez, this shouldn't really be a flood problem, in our town. Because, we border on the Housatonic River, but that's very well controlled. And, I never thought of it as particularly bad as far as flood is concerned. But it is, or it was. So we never know. And like I said, we did get the flood warnings, but I've gotten hundreds of those since I've been first selectman. Flash flood warning. That just didn't seem to mean anything to people, because that's not our experience here. Floods were never in our experience, but they sure are now. I am delighted to be here with the governor and commissioners, and of course Congressman Heim, who all were very, very helpful to us in our recovery. And if you look around, you drive down the road, right behind me is the one that caused all the problems, Little River. And it's not a little river, it's a big brook. So, it's if it can happen to us, it can happen anywhere. And, I'm very pleased with the recovery. I'm very pleased with the fact that we worked together. Nobody asked what party you were in. Nobody asked what your ethnic origin is or anything like that. We just as a town, as a state, and as a federal government pitched in and made us whole again. And I want to thank everybody involved for that. But once again, it's not about our experience necessarily, but I think that's why this site was chosen for this press conference. So I guess now I'd like to call on the DES PP Commissioner Ron L. Higgins. I believe you're going to speak.
Thank you, George.
I think I actually took his place.
No, you did a great job. Good job. Thank you.
I can never match you.
Oh, absolutely. George, first and foremost, thank you for your leadership, and thank you again for welcoming us to your town. My name is Ronell Higgins. I am the Commissioner of the Department of Emergency Services and Public Protection. My agency oversees two divisions that are first responders in an emergency: the Connecticut State Police and the Division of Emergency Management and Homeland Security. Today, well, you've heard from Oxford First Selectman George Temple, but today you're also going to hear from our U.S. Representative, Mr. Jim Hines, who's going to provide a Washington perspective. And you're going to hear from our Deputy Commissioner, Ms. Brenda Bergeron, who oversees the Division of Emergency Management and Homeland Security, along with Bill Turner, the State Director of Emergency Management. And you'll also hear from our governor, Governor Ned Lamont. First, before I turn the microphone over to Jim Hines, I just want to first and foremost thank Governor Lamont and Congressman Hines for joining us, along with Oxford First Selectman George Temple, Deputy Commissioner Bergeron, and all the other dignitaries, our fire chief that is here as well. I think it's important if we can I want to just ask for a moment of silence for those who lost their lives in Texas these last several days, if we could, please. Thank you. As we stand before this quiet river that Mr. Temple was just describing, we recognize that last year, almost a year ago, it was a raging torrent last August. There's two words that you're going to hear from those who are behind me today: be prepared. You will hear that early. You will hear that often. We will continue to emphasize that as we continue to work our way through hurricane season. We're all mourning the tragedy in Texas, but we also recall the two residents that were lost here in Oxford that you heard about earlier, almost a year ago. It's important for us that we use this moment to be laser focused on our mission at the Department of Emergency Services and Public Protection, which is planning, preparation, readiness for any weather threats that may come our way. All of the resources of our agency and the state are ready, but we must have our Connecticut residents ready to work with us. We're going to ask you today to sign up for alerts, have an evacuation plan, and make sure you have a transistor radio. Put together a go bag. Have these conversations in your household, at the kitchen table, with your family. As I shared earlier, we are in the midst of hurricane season, and forecasters are sharing that there is a high likelihood that we will experience some severe storms. It has happened here in Connecticut. It could happen again. So as we prepare for severe statewide weather and a statewide weather event, I want you to reflect upon the damage that was done in 2012 with Superstorm Sandy, and the last true hurricane back in 1985 with Hurricane Gloria. Those of us that were around during that time can remember these things can and do happen in the state of Connecticut. And we don't have too far to think back when we think about the events of last August, when we think about the deadly flood here, as well as the tragic wildfires in Berlin. So there's a lot that happens here in the state of Connecticut. The Division of Emergency Management and DESK stands ready to help. As we learn more details about early warnings in Texas and all that's going on, I just want to say that, folks, we are here, we are prepared, and we are ready to work with our cities and our towns as we have always done. Right now, I'm going to call up our U.S. Representative Congressman Jim Hines, to provide a national perspective. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. I want to thank the governor and the commissioners and the first selectmen who are here today to get the word out, especially George Temple. George and I, for a small town, George and I have stood side by side too many times contemplating tragedy he talked about the flooding, which was a human tragedy. A couple of years before that, we were walking a neighborhood where a tornado had touched down here in Connecticut. And thank God there was no loss of life associated with that tornado, but there could have been. And there was certainly a lot of terror for a particular neighborhood where there was a lot of property destruction. And so knowing what to do and being prepared makes all the difference. I wish I could tell you, and I'm not going to dwell on this, but I wish I could tell you that Washington was doing everything they could to augment and reform and modernize FEMA. If you read the news, you know that that is not happening. And I'm not going to go too far down that path, but to say that it's my job to work on that, but it's all of our job to address the things that we can do right here. What I think of as the last mile. The tragedy in Texas. Word got out, but it didn't get to the people that were in the Mystic camp. And as a result, there were terrible fatalities amongst young people. And thank you, Commissioner, for reminding us of that loss of life. Frankly, in a world where everyone standing here is carrying a communications device, there's no excuse for an inability to get the information that is life-saving out. There's a poster there that shows CT alert. But there's an awful lot we can do independent of that. Checking up on our neighbors, local leadership, and local leadership guiding, of course, our spectacular first responders, police, EMS, fire, making sure that they are prepared. Individuals. What happens in Washington doesn't in any way affect the ability of an individual to pack a go bag, to ask a couple of very simple questions, like what happens when the road out in front of my house is flooded with 9 inches of water, and I know that it's a terrible mistake to drive through that water. These are the kinds of conversations and thinking that will prevent ultimately the tragedy that occurred in Texas. So, Governor, thank you for convening us. Thank you to our first responders here and our political leadership, because if we do enough of this and get the word out, we will not be able to stop natural disasters, but we'll be able to minimize the human toll and the property toll that they wreak on us. So thank you. I'm not quite sure who's up next, Commissioner. I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Congressman Himes, and thank you for your leadership down in Washington. Now I'd like to call up Deputy Commissioner Brenda Bergeron, who oversees the Division of Emergency Management and Homeland Security. Deputy Commissioner.
Thank you, Commissioner, and thank you, Mr. Temple and Congressman Himes and the Governor, because we really all work as a team. So one of the things I want to talk about today is the robust emergency management system that we have in Connecticut. It's not done just by DEMIS, the Division of Emergency Management and Homeland Security. It really is a team effort with state, local, tribal, federal, nonprofit, and private sector partners and the public working together throughout the year. And I want to give you a few examples of the things that we do to keep us safe. First of all, we have 5 regional coordinators who are available 24/7 to assist any municipality or tribal nation in the state if they request assistance. And they are constantly working with their local partners, making sure that all the resources that are needed are available to them if they need them. We have weather experts on staff, and I'm going to embarrass Josh by pointing to him, including Josh Singranelli, who are in constant communication with the National Weather Service and NOAA to keep us informed on the latest forecast. Lots of the work that we do to prepare for severe summer weather, including possible hurricanes or tornadoes or tropical storms, happens behind the scenes. And so you don't hear about it, you don't see it, but we're there all the time working. And I just want to give you some of the examples. Our staff has been training together, reviewing and updating plans to be ready to support the Governor's State Emergency Operations Center and make sure that the state EOC is ready if we need to activate it. All of our critical state agencies and non-governmental organizations have liaisons that are trained to work with us at the State Emergency Operations Center, including Eversource and Avangrid, the Red Cross, United Way 211, the National Guard, the Connecticut State Police, Fire Services, Energy and Environmental Protection, DOT, and other agencies. So we're all there to assist our municipalities and the public if they're needed. We work closely with our municipal partners, and we really, we do it throughout the year, but it gets very much upped during this time of year. In June, we held a hurricane preparedness call with municipalities. We had over 200 participants. We also survey to see what resources and assets are available, so we'll be able to help with mutual aid if it's needed. The Department of Administrative Services, some of whom our friends are here today to assist with the logistics, they update their emergency procurement contracts so that every state agency and every municipality can use those contracts if it's needed. And municipalities are doing the same thing at the local level. They're convening their unified commands, making sure they can identify who they're going to need at the table, checking their plans, and working on public information. And that really is a message that you heard both from the Commissioner, from Mr. Temple, and from Congressman Himes. We held flooding awareness workshops for the public throughout the state over the last few months. We had several hundred people attend. That's good, but we need more engagement by the public to understand the risks that are involved. And one of the things I want to bring up, based on what the First Selectman said, is that when you get a watch from the National Weather Service, that means something could happen. If you get a warning from the National Weather Service, it means that it's likely that something could happen in your area. One of the things we've seen over the last couple of years, which we had not seen before historically in Connecticut, are emergency alerts from the National Weather Service. If you receive an emergency alert, that's when all the things that the Commissioner and Congressman Himes were talking about need to be activated. You need to be ready to either shelter in place and get to higher ground, or do whatever is needed depending on what the emergency is. But that's something that's very new to us in Connecticut, as the First Selectman mentioned. And there are lots of other things that residents can do. The DEMIS website at www.desp/demis.gov, DEMHS.gov, has all sorts of information on it, but there's other sites as well. You're going to hear from the State Emergency Management Director, Bill Turner, about some of the other things that are available. But I wanted to end with good advice that I learned from my 90-year-old dad, who's come up a couple of times in this situation because I was in Newtown with him the day of the flooding. Sign up for alerts. Look and see what's available for you to make sure that you have the resources that you need at your fingertips, because there could be hours, if not several days, when you might have to operate on your own. If there's bad weather threatening your area, keep your phone or your radio by your side. It's better to be annoyed by alerts that turn out that the emergency doesn't happen in your area than to shut it off because you find it annoying and then realize that you could have put your health or your safety or that of your family at risk. And ultimately, remember to check on your neighbors, your family, and friends. That's how we communicate with each other. Social media is great, texts are great, radio is great, but communicating with each other when you know that something's happening and making sure the people who are most vulnerable in your lives are safe really matters. So with that being said, I'm going to turn it over to State Emergency Management Director Bill Turner.
Good afternoon. Thank you all for coming out today. My name is Bill Turner. I'm the State Emergency Management Director here in Connecticut. I just want to emphasize two key points here, and I think you've heard a couple of them already. It's all about preparedness, so we need everybody here in Connecticut to be prepared, but we also need everybody to stay informed. So I'll start with preparedness. When we talk about preparedness, it doesn't necessarily need to be a complicated process. You heard things about having a plan and having a go kit. It's all about just educating yourself and your family and your friends about what are the risks and hazards we have here in Connecticut that could impact us. Flooding is the biggest one. It causes the most damage, the most injuries, and unfortunately the most deaths. But we also have all sorts of other threats and hazards here in the state. And it all begins at that level of personal preparedness. We need everybody to take preparedness seriously and do their part to educate themselves, make a plan, and have a process in place that you know what to do to keep your friends, family, and your pets safe when disaster strikes. And it all starts at that around the kitchen table, as you heard the Commissioner say. Have a conversation. It doesn't need to be a 300-page plan. Just talk it through with your family. If you get a wireless emergency alert, which I can talk about here in a second, in the middle of the night that tells you to evacuate, do you and your family know what to do? Talk that through with them. Maybe you're not at home. Maybe your kids are at school and you're at work, or maybe you're out on the road and you get that alert. What are you going to do when you get that alert? Talk that through. Do a couple scenario-based discussions and just work through the details of what you can do to be prepared. As the Deputy Commissioner mentioned, our website has really good resources about what you can do to be prepared, and really good links, including a hurricane awareness hub, as we're in the middle of hurricane season here, to go and get one-stop information about hurricanes, our evacuation zones here in the state, and what the risks are associated with those hurricanes. The second piece I'll mention was be informed. So how do you stay informed? Connecticut has a very robust emergency notification system called CT Alert. We encourage everyone to sign up for CT Alert, which is our state mass notification system. It is an opt-in system, It is one way that we are going to get a hold of you if there's a statewide emergency. So we encourage everybody to please sign up. When you sign up, you put where you work, where you live, and it then also registers you within your individual town to also for them to be to communicate with you. But we also encourage residents to visit their town website. Every town in Connecticut has an emergency management director that is on staff that can help you understand what your risks are in your town, what's unique to your town, and what you can do to be prepared. When it comes to CT Alert, we know that we can't get everybody to sign up. The reality is just under 7% of the state has enrolled in the system. That's common across the country. There's a thing that's real that's called alert fatigue. Sometimes people don't want to be bothered by alerts, but the reality is we need to get you information when there's something threatening you and your family. So we have other tools in our toolbox, including the Integrated Public Alert and Warning System, or IPALS, through FEMA, that allows us to send those wireless emergency alerts out if there's an imminent threat to life or safety. When it comes to weather, the National Weather Service does that for us. We're provided service by 3 offices here in Connecticut, and they do a great job sending the alerts out like we saw here last year in Oxford. But there's other tools in our toolbox, like the ability to still use the emergency alert system that can push out alerts via television or AM, FM radio or NOAA weather radios. A NOAA weather radio is a great tool. While it requires power, it has a battery backup, but it's a really good way that if there's cell service challenges or other communication challenges, it's a very cheap investment that you can put in your home that will allow you to get those alerts. So just to summarize, I can't emphasize enough the importance, and we need everybody to do their part with the preparedness piece, and everybody to also have a trusted source of information to stay informed. As I was driving in here, I saw the billboards on 84 about praying for Texas. And you know, when we get to that point, disaster has already struck, and our hearts go out to those impacted by the incident in Texas. And we actually just sent one of our staff members to help in Texas with the recovery effort. But before we get to that point, we want to do as much as we can to prevent things and be prepared. But the reality is we can't stop things from happening. But we know that the community is going to step up in times of disaster, like they are in Texas, like they did here in Oxford. And everybody's going to work together to get us back to where we need to be. But before we get to that point, let's all do our part to be prepared so that when we get in those situations, we're much better off and have a much smoother road to recovery. So thank you for coming out, and turn it over to Governor, Commissioner. Yeah. Sorry. All right. Messed that one up. Governor Ned Lamont. So, Governor.
Thank you, buddy. Just reiterate what Bill said. We're going to do everything we can to notify you, make sure you stay safe, CT alert, and then, as he said, make a plan. Make a plan. Know what to do if you get that alert. Know where you can get to higher ground. Know where you can go to stay safe, and your loved ones stay safe. Because this happens so friggin' fast. I mean, you heard George talk about, you know, this is a brook, and then it's a little river, and then it's a raging river, and that's all because 14 inches of rain poured down, and what was it, 3-4 hours? You know, we were down here very fast there at the shopping center in Seymour, and, you know, the poor guy at the clothing store, he just said, you know, I got the alert, but I get a lot of alerts, and by the time I got down to the store, I was a foot underwater, and I got an alert saying, watch out, there's flooding. But I want to give you the good news, too. I was so impressed with the way people responded. You know, first and foremost, the number of volunteers that stepped up immediately, you know, making sure that people had a place to stay, making sure that they had food, protecting them. I love the event we did to raise some money. We raised over $1 million in pretty short order. People in the community really came forward, make sure you had a longer-term place you could stay, making sure that you had food and were being taken care of. You know, at that point, you know, I love the feds, but while they're revving their engines, a lot of people still need some help. So the state stepped up. We got $25,000 grants out to, you know, small businesses and homeowners just to give them a little bit of breathing room so they could start stocking up their shelves again and get the mud out of there and making a difference. And along the way, look, I got to give a shout out. You got an amazing congressman in Jim Himes. He's every day fighting for you down there. We got SBA, we've got FEMA, and they came forward. It takes a little bit of while, but they came forward. SBA finding very low interest loans for those small businesses, low interest loans for those homes, get them going. George says he's still waiting for the FEMA to reimburse for a lot of the work that was done here, a lot of roads and bridges. You know, this road right out here, that was taken down. That was a foot underwater. Over 6 bridges wiped out. Some of them we got back in less than 6 months. Doing everything can to make your life a little more livable. But my message to you is loud and clear. sign up for the alert. If you don't know how to sign up for the alert, if you're of a certain age, you don't know how to sign up for the alert, we got the interns over there. They'll show you, the desk interns will show you how to sign up for the alert, so we can do everything we can to keep you safe, and then make sure you have a plan. This is happening, unfortunately, with more and more frequency. You see it in not just Texas and North Carolina, but Massachusetts and Vermont, and here less than a year ago. We're rebuilding in a way to make this a little less likely, a little less damage, but at the end of the day, do everything you can to keep yourself safe, and we're there with you. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, before we end, a couple people that I would like to acknowledge are Fire Chief and of course our Public Works Director, and that is Scott Pelletier and Wayne Watt. They did a marvelous job. Firemen and first responders in this town, it was fantastic, and thank you both from me. And I'd also like to introduce my old buddy from Seymour. Ann, you want to come up and say a few words? Ann, she's not ready. She's not, but if I know her, she'll handle it. And there are our neighbors and friends, and Anne Marie Dragonis, first selectman of Seymour.
Thank you, George. Thank you, everyone, for coming out. The governor and everybody could not say it best, is be prepared. In the town of Seymour, we have the reverse code red. Seymour couldn't have handled how they handled it if it wasn't for our emergency management director, our volunteer fire departments, and our community. Our community just came together in a time where we never thought would happen. But Demis is right. The weather in Connecticut is changing. And to expect flooding, to expect tornadoes, if you told me back in 1987 when I was graduating high school that we were going to get hit with their tornadoes the way we were getting, I would have told you you're not living in Connecticut, you're in Kansas. Connecticut has been hit with some major weather, and we just need to be prepared, and I think that's what everybody has to do. So get onto the Connecticut Alert, hop onto your own town's website, and sign up for those red alerts, because that's how we get the word out to you. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. We will take some on-topic questions at this time.
Can you talk about what was learned from 11 months ago and maybe what's different about this year's plan?
Absolutely. Depp, I'm going to bring you on.
So I think probably the biggest message is this issue of personal preparedness. And also, we're always working to enhance what we have. So we are working to enhance the communication systems that we have in place, including encouraging signing up for CT alerts. It's disappointing to know that only 7% of the people have signed up for it. We do have access to the 911 system, so we're able to get messages out through that system. But this really does give us a chance to increase the level of alerts that we can get out. Anything you want to add?
Yeah, and one other thing I'd like to mention too, I think a big takeaway, and what we're seeing more and more is that flooding is happening more often outside of the FEMA designated floodplains. And we're hearing so often where people have lost their home or had flooded homes where they didn't have flood insurance and they didn't realize they needed it because they weren't in a floodplain. And there's actually some recent legislation that was passed on this topic to help homeowners that are purchasing a home understand their risk. But that was a big takeaway. The majority of the flooding last year here, people didn't have flood insurance because they weren't in a floodplain and didn't realize that they could get it or need it. So we're really trying to just help people understand not only how to keep yourself prepared and safe, but also protect your investments, protect your property by making sure you have that flood insurance in place, whether you're in a floodplain or not. So.
Bill, can you talk about what the difference is between the normal emergency alerts that come out through all of our phones and what you get with CT Alert?
Yeah, so CT Alert is the statewide system. So we reserve that for emergency use, but we would use that where something is forecast or we have a heads up on something coming our way to really get the message out to take this seriously and what actions you can take to stay safe. But as we would get closer to the incident and there was a need to maybe do any evacuations or shelter-in-place orders, we would leverage CT Alert. It's all one system. We actually use CT Alert as the backbone to activate those wireless emergency alerts. But when we trigger those wireless emergency alerts, we really reserve those for those imminent life safety issues. You need to take action now. When your phone makes that noise, we need people to take them seriously. We understand sometimes there is that alert fatigue is real, but when you hear that noise go off, that means something is happening immediately near you and it's likely to impact you, and you need to follow those instructions with that alert. So.
If I could just give a couple of examples from the last year when we used what we commonly call WEA, or the Wireless Emergency Alert. For the Hawthorne fire, there was an alert, and we can set the perimeter, so there was an alert around the mountain so that people that would go camping or hiking up there would get that really uncomfortably awful sounding alert and know to stay out of the area, and it would tell you that, do not go through this area. The second time it was used, or the first time, was when the bridge was melted on 95. As far down as Delaware, we sent out a wireless emergency alert so that people that were traveling on 95 would know to find an alternate route and not get stuck in the traffic there. So it really does, it tends to be, as the director said, large-scale events where we can help to let statewide people know that there's an issue.
Yeah, and the key thing is that CT Alert is opt-in. I think we've said this, but wireless emergency alerts, you don't have to opt in. If you have a smartphone, you're going to get that alert unless you went into your settings and turned it off, which we really don't encourage people to do. And that's where you're going to get those amber alerts or tornado warnings or evacuation notices. We really reserve that system only for those imminent life safety alerts. So.
And while you're both up there, can you talk about what the impact of all the federal cuts on NOAA, National Weather Service, FEMA, how's that going to impact the next time this happens?
So I think it's too early for us to tell at this point. We work closely with FEMA Region 1, and they are good partners. We are still, we're still looking to see what the results are of some of the cuts, and we appreciate the work that someone like Congressman Himes is doing to support the efforts that need to be made.
I mean, it sounds like having meteorologists on staff is kind of a good backstop, right?
Yes, but they use the information that we get from our National Weather Service and NOAA partners, the U.S. Geological Survey, which provides information on gauges and things like that. So again, emergency management and the kind of things that we do, they're kind of behind the scenes, but they help to support all of the public safety activity that takes place across the country, and certainly in Connecticut.
Governor, more so after this hurricane season, the president has talked about wanting to wind down FEMA, and he feels that states can better respond to disasters. Do you share that view, or are you concerned about what would happen?
I don't share that view. I mean, we can respond quickly. We can make some really emergency measures to help people in real need. But some of these disasters are in the hundreds of millions of dollars or beyond. Look what's going on. And there you really do need the federal government as a backstop so you can count upon them. Look, we're thinking, to John's point about what we can do in the near term. We have a rainy day fund. It's usually there to protect against recession, so we don't have to raise taxes or cut education spending. But maybe we ought to have a little bit there just in case I can help out George in the case of emergency while he's waiting for FEMA to respond.
So would this be like a new separate emergency fund to backstop
No, just
FEMA?
thinking about how I can help out Seymour and Oxford when they get in a pinch and they're still waiting to get the resources they need. George has got tens of millions of dollars out of pocket still waiting for that response from FEMA. It's going to come.
So you're talking about if there's another disaster like this, you'd be open to tapping the rainy day fund. If
I got to work with the legislature on that, but seems like a timely name for the fund. Thanks, everybody.
Mm-hmm.